The narrator spoke with urgency as screens flashed red across the open plan office. And Alex Carter stared at a dashboard in free fall while a trending hashtag burned their brand name. Alex said, "Pause the rollout now." Maya Brooks said, "We need a clear statement before the hour ends." Victoria Hales, quote, climbed a news ticker, a razor in text. The narrator explained how silence felt heavier than blame. Ethan Cole said, "It's a spike, it will pass," but his eyes slid toward a private chat. Daniel Price said, "Numbers first, spin second." His voice clipped over speakerphone. The narrator described the sound of keyboards like rain on metal. Alex said, "This is on me," and the room stilled. The narrator framed the shock as a door slamming in public. Maya said, "Then we own it and fix it." And the plan began as a whisper. The narrator promised that the next 30 minutes would define the next 30 months. The narrator traced the fallout to the morning before, when a small patch shipped without a test and confidence outran caution. Alex said, "I wanted speed," and the admission pressed into the room like a weight. Maya said, "We can map the failure path in 10 minutes," and markers squeaked as boxes bloomed across a whiteboard. The narrator recalled how leadership is loudest in apology. Daniel said, "Show me the mitigation plan," and the spreadsheet blinked into life. Alex said, "No excuses, just steps," and the phrase landed like a reset switch. The narrator noted the phone still buzzing, a hive that would not sleep. Sarah Patel messaged, "We'll draft a clear statement, no legal fog," and the tone turned crisp. The narrator promised that choices made here would echo in every invoice and inbox tomorrow. Alex said, "Own, fix, learn," and the team repeated it as if it were a vow. The narrator widened the frame to the customers who woke to broken workflows and a flood of error codes. Alex said, "We start with the hardest calls and dial the number that once sent praise." A voice cracked through the speaker, and Alex said, "You deserve better today." The narrator measured the distance between pride and responsibility. Maya said, "We will credit downtime and give a stable build by noon," and the promise tightened the plan. The narrator heard keystrokes become metronomes. Noah Kim said, "Hotfix branch is ready," and the Git log roll like a drum line. Alex said, "Ship when it's safe, not when it's loud," and silence agreed. The narrator observed how humility steadied hands that once shook. The narrator brought the outside world inside as headlines stacked like bricks. Victoria Hales said, "Markets punish confusion," on a finance show, and the clip looped beside a plummeting line. Alex said, "Let them talk, we'll show the fix," while the team tuned out the echo. The narrator compared noise to weather, relentless but passable. Ethan said, "We could blame the vendor," and the room cooled. Sarah Patel said, "We won't mislead," and the words cut clean. The narrator defined integrity as a scaffold erected in the storm. Grace Lynn texted, "Admit fast, repair faster, teach always," and the cadence settled hearts. Alex said, "We lead with facts," and cameras outside the building found nothing to twist. The narrator shifted to confession, a voice that refuses disguise. Alex said, 5 things I wish I knew before I started," and the room listened as if to a map. Maya said, "Say it plain," and pens hovered. The narrator listed the first line in invisible ink across the air. "Validate before you build." Alex said, "I chased elegance over evidence," and a few heads nodded with the ache of recognition. The narrator promised that each lesson would be earned, not borrowed. Daniel said, "Then let the numbers tell the truth," and spreadsheets waited like mirrors. Alex said, "We'll write this down for them and for us," and the future pulled up a chair. The narrator rewound to the first prototype that impressed friends but not customers, a glossy shell over guesses. Alex Carter said, "We built what we loved," and the air admitted a quiet flaw. Maya Brooks said, "Let's hear what they hate," and a simple plan replaced pride. The narrator recalled an empty sign-up list like a mirror that refused to flatter. Noah Kim said, heat map shows they stall at pricing, and color blocks exposed friction. Grace Lynn said, validation is rented from the market, not bestowed by you, and pens lifted. The narrator described how hard it is to trade elegance for evidence. Alex said, we asked 10 real users this week, and a calendar filled with courage. Daniel Price said, bring me numbers that argue back, and the theme became measurement. The narrator set the lesson, validate before you build, and keep validating after. The narrator followed the pair into a cafe where assumptions lost to reality. Alex Carter said, walk me through your day, and a buyer traced pain none of them had shipped to solve. Maya Brooks said, when do you feel stuck? And the answer cut straight to onboarding. The narrator watched pride bend without breaking. Alex said, if we reduce steps by half, would you switch? And a nod arrived without flattery. The narrator marked the difference between compliments and commitments. The buyer said, if I can set this up in an hour, I'm in, and the promise hit like a bell. Maya said, then the first screen is dashboard, not tour, and a sketch landed. The narrator named a rhythm. Ask, listen, distill, repeat, then build. The narrator charted street tests where comfort met concrete. Alex Carter said, 5 minutes. Show me your flow, and hands hesitated at a cluttered screen. Maya Brooks said, skip what you don't need, and confusion found its culprit. The narrator heard patience beat speed in small rooms with big truths. Noah Kim said breadcrumbs reduced drop-off, and the next build got lighter. Alex said, we remove 3 options and add 1 outcome, and the page breathed. The narrator noted how delight came from absence, not addition. Daniel Price said, run the A, test 3 days, not 3 hours, and discipline slowed the pulse. The narrator saw confidence return, this time borrowed from behavior, not belief. The narrator welcomed mentor wisdom that trimmed months into mornings. Grace Lynn said, name the job, not the feature, and silence made space for clarity. Alex Carter said, they want fewer cancellations, not prettier charts, and sticky notes moved. Maya Brooks said, so the metric is saved orders per week, and the goal acquired a spine. The narrator celebrated the comfort of sharp definitions. Grace Lynn said, charge the moment you deliver that win, and fear met math. Alex said, trial after win, not win after trial, and the funnel invert. The narrator underlined the change. Market first, code second, revenue when value land. The narrator measured new traction by quieter dashboards and sharper questions. Alex Carter said, 3 customers renewed after the onboarding fix, and the room exhaled. Maya Brooks said, churn dropped 2 points, and a small cheer held. The narrator reminded that early wins are seeds, not harvest. Daniel Price said, lock the learning loop, and cadence took root. Alex said, weekly interviews, monthly roadmap, quarterly pricing review, and structure replaced vibes. The narrator closed the lesson with a line that held, validation is a practice, not an event. The narrator turned to money, the quiet force that decides loud dreams. Alex Carter said, we have runway right, and the spreadsheet answered with thinning lines. Daniel Price said, burn rate is truth, and hope stepped aside. The narrator compared cash to oxygen, invisible until gone. Maya Brooks said, map costs to outcomes, and unnecessary servers blinked like guilty lights. Noah Kim said, we can batch jobs nightly, and compute costs shrank. The narrator watched panic become arithmetic. Alex said, freeze hires, pause nice to haves, keep what moves revenue, and the plan found its bones. The narrator set the chapter. Cash flow is oxygen, and breath must be measured. The narrator followed invoices aging like unreturned calls. Alex Carter said, "We delivered last month." And silence from a flagship account answered back. Sarah Patel said, "Contracts allow late fees and pause of service, and ethics met leverage." The narrator tracked the cost of polite delays. Alex said, "We will remind firmly and help finance set terms," and dignity stayed intact. The narrator noticed how respect rises with clarity. Maya Brooks said, "Let's offer autopay with a discount and friction lost." The narrator drew a line between kindness and softness, choosing the first and losing the second. The narrator returned to unit economics, a language that refuses flattery. Daniel Price said, "Show me contribution margin by plan," and chart stopped pretending. Alex Carter said, "Premium covers support if churn stays low," and the lever appeared. The narrator loved the candor of math. Noah Kim said, "Support tickets drop with better onboarding and loops interlock." Maya Brooks said, "Then price mirrors value delivery speed," and tiers shifted. The narrator watched a business become a machine with measured gears. Alex said, "We will not scale what does not pay its way," and focus clicked shut like a case. The narrator shifted to systems that guard cash while saving grace. Alex Carter said, "Net turns to 15, deposits for custom work, and chaos lost territory." Sarah Patel said, "Templates for renewals and dunning," and time returned. The narrator praised the piece of prepared words. Maya Brooks said, "Weekly cash stand-up, red, yellow, green, and attention found rhythm." Noah Kim said, "Alerts when receivables crossed 30, and the clock acquired alarms." The narrator felt anxiety replaced by cadence, a kinder heartbeat. Alex said, "No heroics, just habits," and the room nodded. The narrator closed the lesson with a scene of choices that preserve tomorrow. Alex Carter said, "We cut 2 pet projects," and a hush respected the cost. Daniel Price said, "Runway extends 3 months," and shoulders lowered. The narrator explained that survival is a strategy, not a mood. Maya Brooks said, "Ship the billing fixes, tell customers why, and trust aligned with truth." The narrator summed the rule with simple weight: cash flow is oxygen, protect it first and the rest can bloom. The narrator traced the cracks that appear when speed outruns culture, and a brittle quiet settled over desks after a rushed hire fumbled a release. Alex Carter said, "We chased headcount, not fit," and regret pressed into the carpet. Maya Brooks said, "We never defined what good looks like," and the whiteboard waited. The narrator admitted that brilliance without trust multiplies risk. Sarah Patel said, "Boundaries keep people safe," and eyes lifted from screens. Noah Kim said, "We need code owners and clear reviews," and tension unspooled. The narrator felt the room trade defensiveness for design. Alex said, "No heroes, only teams," and shoulders lowered. Grace Lynn messaged, "Hire for values, train for skill," and the phrase stuck like a rail. The narrator named the cost of haste and the promise of patience. Alex said, "We restart with purpose, job by job," and a new cadence found its drum. The narrator followed the policy meeting where words would carry weight when hours grew long. Sarah Patel said, "Consent for after hours, work must be explicit," and pen stopped. Alex Carter said, "We honor weekends," and the promise felt like light. The narrator compared clarity to guardrails that let speed exist without fear. Maya Brooks said, "Define escalation paths," and sticky notes became lanes. Noah Kim said, "On-call rotates, docks first," and fatigue loosened its grip. The narrator watched respect gather like gravity. Alex said, "We protect focus with no meeting blocks," and calendars breathed. Sarah said, "Harassment rules must be visible," and silence respected the line. The narrator understood that culture is not a slogan, but a sequence of practiced choices. Alex said, "Publish this today," and the door to better work swung open. The narrator watched the reset workshop where roles gained edges and outcomes gained names. Maya Brooks said, "Every project has a dry," and confusion lost its hiding place. Alex Carter said, "We measure lead time, not loudness," and a hum of relief spread. The narrator noted how cadence calms ambition into craft. Noah Kim said, "We ship small daily," and risk shrank to fit a lunch break. Grace Lynn said, "Rituals teach faster than memos," and heads nodded. The narrator saw ceremony become system. Alex said, "Retro without blame, roadmap without fog, and markers dance." Sarah Patel said, "Document decisions in plain language," and future Alex silently thanked present Alex. The narrator felt momentum return with quieter confidence. Alex said, "People over ideas, always," and the sentence carried like a lighthouse line. The narrator brought family truth into the office when Jenna Carter arrived with a look that broke through bravado. Jenna Carter said, "You vanished at dinner again," and the room tilted. Alex Carter said, "I am learning to leave the laptop shut," and the sentence fought habit. The narrator honored the courage it takes to balance love and labor. Maya Brooks said, "We can stagger schedules," and relief found options. Jenna said, "Winds feel better when you are there," and the echo lingered. The narrator recognized how personal stakes restore perspective. Alex said, "No more midnight slacks," and a boundary set its post. The narrator recorded the lesson that people need presence more than promises. Jenna smiled, small and real, and the office felt like a place to return from, not a place to live in. The narrator framed the day a single hire changed velocity, not by code but by care. Alex Carter said, "We need someone who lifts teams," and a shortlist narrowed. Maya Brooks said, "Coach not cowboy," and resumes thinned. The narrator welcomed an operations lead who treated processes like instruments. Noah Kim said, "Stand-ups run on time now, and minutes return to life." Sarah Patel said, "Incidents close with clear notes," and risk remembered its place. The narrator felt the company breathe in unison. Alex said, "This is what fit feels like," and smiles reached eyes. The narrator closed the act with a line that held, "When you choose people well, the work chooses greatness back." The narrator opened on a handshake that felt solid until it vanished in a calendar reschedule. Alex Carter said, "They promised rollout next quarter," and an empty inbox answered. Maya Brooks said, "We built the integration on faith, and trust thinned." The narrator compared verbal deals to fog that looks like ground. Daniel Price said, "No signature, no forecast," and hope stepped aside. Sarah Patel said, "We need milestones and remedies," and the page awaited ink. The narrator felt the sting that teaches faster than praise. Alex said, "We own the miss and changed the rule," and resolve replaced rumor. The narrator set the act. Contracts beat handshakes, and clarity prevents casualties. The narrator followed a whisper into the break room, where a rumor gained a receipt. Ethan Cole said, "I had a side call to keep options open," and the air thinned. Alex Carter said, "Options for whom?" and the silence admitted an answer. The narrator drew the line between initiative and insubordination. Sarah Patel said, "Side agreements reach duty," and policy stood tall. The narrator watched disappointment arrive before anger. Ethan said, "I thought it would push us forward," and the justification crumbled. Alex said, "We need one voice with clients," and trust demanded repair. The narrator marked the moment accountability chose its chair. The narrator shifted to a table stacked with templates where precision became protection. Sarah Patel said scope, payment, acceptance, termination and clauses lined up like guards. Alex Carter said, tie invoices to milestones and risk-found checkpoints. The narrator admired language that narrows lanes without narrowing trust. Maya Brooks said, service levels mapped to credits and fairness gained math. Daniel Price said prepaid for custom builds and cash grew teeth. The narrator felt the company stand taller under well-cut armor. Alex said, no work without paper, and pens clicked like safeties. The narrator walked into a conference room where truth would meet consequence. Alex Carter said, the side promise stops now, and chairs stilled. Ethan Cole said, I can fix it, and the room waited on turn. The narrator respected accountability that does not flinch. Sarah Patel said, client will receive a corrected addendum, and remedy found form. Maya Brooks said, we will communicate one plan, one owner, and confusion lost its voice. The narrator watched guardrails become practice. Alex said future breaches mean exit, and the boundary landed. The narrator noted how a company chooses its character in how it enforces the line. The narrator closed the act with a checklist that would outlive memory. Alex Carter said, every deal travels with a playbook, and folders found names. Maya Brooks said, intake, review, redline, sign, implement, and cadence click. The narrator felt risk shrink beneath routine. Daniel Price said, forecast only signed revenue, and numbers spoke plainly. Sarah Patel said, archive versions with dates, and history became searchable. The narrator affirmed the rule that protects courage. When contracts carry clarity, teams can carry speed. Alex said, we trade certainty for nothing, and the future agreed. The narrator opened on a support queue that sounded like sirens, and the thread turned wildfire in minutes. Alex Carter said, we answer every post, no defensiveness, and the room braced. Maya Brooks said, triage by impact, not volume, and a board filled with red tags. The narrator watched trust drain faster than data. Daniel Price said, show me a recovery plan, customers can feel, and metrics waited for meaning. Noah Kim said, root cause replicates on edge cases and scripts sharpen. The narrator marked a pivot from saving face to saving people. Sarah Patel said, apologize without hedging, and state refunds clearly, and language found backbone. The narrator felt the company choose humility. Alex said, I will answer the harshest thread myself, and the team stood behind the name that would carry the promise. The narrator widened to the echo chamber where a single clip shaped a story. Victoria Hale said, brands that overpromise deserve the market's correction, and the quote climbed. Alex Carter said, we overpromised speed, not care, and the distinction mattered. The narrator compared narrative to gravity that bends light. Maya Brooks said, publish the timeline, publish the fixes, and secrecy left the building. The narrator watched candor dull the blade of speculation. Daniel Price said, hold a live Q&A, and risk met sunlight. Alex said, we will not dodge hard questions, and nerves steadied. The narrator felt the crowd lean closer, not away. The narrator entered the live session where contrition beat spin. Alex Carter said, we failed you this week, and here is how we will repair it. And comments slowed. Maya Brooks said, credits post today, hotfix ships tomorrow, and time frames landed. The narrator praised the physics of sincerity. Noah Kim said, we added guardrails so this path cannot reoccur, and diagrams calmed. Sarah Patel said, your data was safe. Here is the audit, and relief surfaced. The narrator saw strangers become partners in repair. Alex said, if we miss a promise, we pay for the miss, and the rule changed the air. The narrator named the moment a hinge on which reputation swings. The narrator followed the team back to the product table where customers took the head seat. Alex Carter said, invite the loudest critics to co-design, and chairs filled. Maya Brooks said, Show me the moment you feel lost, and clicks drew a map. The narrator watched friction turn into features. Noah Kim said, single path onboarding with clear exit, and the maze simplified. Sarah Patel said, plain language policies on every risk point, and fear shrank. The narrator felt respect move from sentiment to structure. Alex said, we will pilot with you and publish results, and the loop closed. The narrator measured the days after, when mentions cooled and gratitude arrived. Alex Carter said, we kept every promise this week, and the line felt rare. Maya Brooks said, NPS recovered and churn reversed, and charts finally smiled. The narrator cautioned that reputation is rented, due each day. Daniel Price said, brand is a promise kept repeatedly, and budgets followed discipline. Noah Kim said, alerts fired twice, and we caught both, and calm felt earned. Sarah Patel said, our apology policy is published, and mistakes met sunlight. The narrator closed the lesson. Consistency turns apology into trust. The narrator uncovered a thread that never fit. A log entry at hours. No one claimed. Noah Kim said, credentials used from an odd IP, and the room chilled. Alex Carter said, who had this access? And eyes moved to the corner. Ethan Cole said, I safeguarded contingencies, and the sentence fractured trust. The narrator revealed the twist with a quiet blade. Sarah Patel said, side channels violate policy and law, and the table stiffened. Grace Lynn said, confront truth now or forfeit the future, and breaths steadied. The narrator felt betrayal convert into clarity. Alex said, we restore the boundary and face the fallout, and steps led to a door. The narrator entered a conference room where consequences would meet cameras. Alex Carter said, a colleague violated our trust, and yours. And the live stream held its breath. Ethan Cole said, I believed pressure justified shortcuts, and the words landed heavy. The narrator respected accountability, demanded in daylight. Sarah Patel said, we have revoked access and reported the breach of policy, and process moved. Daniel Price said, investors back integrity, not improvisation, and support narrowed but did not vanish. The narrator watched a company choose character over comfort. Alex said, we create a cleaner contract with the client affected, and the path reopened. The narrator took the story to a negotiation where truth carried more weight than gloss. Alex Carter said, here's what happened, what we fixed, and what we owe. And the room steadied. The client lead said, we value candor and enforced terms, and the dance began. The narrator tracked concessions that honored pain without mortgaging tomorrow. Sarah Patel said, we extend credits and add audit rights, and pens moved. Daniel Price said, payment schedule aligns to service levels, and alignment clicked. The narrator watched two sides rebuild a bridge with specifics, not slogans. Alex said, we will earn this month by month, and the handshake returned with eyes clear. The narrator gathered the 5 lessons into a compass worn from use. Alex Carter said, validate before you build, and sketches showed interviews scheduled. Maya Brooks said, cash flow is oxygen, and a dashboard breathed quietly. The narrator added, people over ideas, and faces replaced features on slides. Sarah Patel said, contracts beat handshakes, and templates lived where memory fails. Alex said, brand is a promise kept, and the wall bore proof in small green lights. The narrator felt the team nod as if hearing their own voices echoed back stronger. Grace Lynn said, repeat them daily until they repeat themselves, and the company's pulse aligned. The narrator closed on a quiet doorway where a day began without dread. Alex Carter said, we open on our terms, and the handle turned. Maya Brooks said, we'll earn trust again today. And sleeves rolled. The narrator saw the city wake with measured light. Noah Kim said, checks passed, and the status board stayed green. Sarah Patel said, The statement remains pinned, and memory kept its promise. Daniel Price said, "Build slow, keep customers close, and growth felt honest." Jenna Carter texted, "Dinner at 7, and balance sounded like a bell." The narrator left a final line on the glass. "The work is never easy, but now it is true."